Hi guys, I just want to share my story about coming to know the Lord with you. So it starts back when I was a teenager and I grew up quite insecure. So I was insecure about my weight, about friendships that I had, and just kind of that frenemy social status, having friends that maybe weren't really for real and talked about you behind your back and things like that. So out of this insecurity, I started to experiment with drugs. So weed was the first drug that I experimented with, and quickly I moved into heavier chemicals like ecstasy, mushrooms, and eventually cocaine. Cocaine was my favorite addiction, and I stayed in that addiction for quite some time. Throughout that, I had a lifestyle, obviously, and that was, that I would lie, cheat, steal. I was in a relationship with my now husband, then boyfriend, Ray, and at kind of one of the lowest points of my addiction, I slept with his best friend to get back at him, and I got pregnant with my first daughter. And when I got pregnant, I was able to stop doing cocaine because I had a reason to stop. And I had my first daughter, and when I got pregnant, I didn't know who the father of that baby was. And I remember being in my bathtub and I would be crying and I'd be like, oh God, I don't know if you're real, but if you are, make my baby come out black, because there was a race difference between the two men that I had slept with. So she did come out, a beautiful baby girl, and she was white, and so that meant that she was not my boyfriend's, but that she was the best friend's. And you can imagine the heartache and turmoil that that brought into my relationship. And so I went back into drug use, not super heavy drugs because moms didn't do cocaine, but I did smoke weed, and I developed a heavy sense of dependency on alcohol. So back it up for 1 second. So I did end up staying with my boyfriend Ray. He ended up standing by my side, which, sometimes I still don't understand, but that is my reality. And he, really showed me what love could be like. I have to give that to him first. Before I knew Jesus and the love of God, he was somebody who loved me through thick and thin and for who I really was at the time, even though that wasn't, always the best person. So fast forward 2 years and I had my daughter Shante, and Shante wasn't even 6 weeks old when I was back out in clubs and I was drinking, and I was a mess. Like, I remember just feeling so lost and just so frustrated with life. I couldn't imagine that the only reason that I existed was to party and to have these kids and to be in a relationship and to work. Like, that to me was not satisfying to my soul. It wasn't satisfying at all. So I remember starting to think thoughts like, oh, well, is this all that life really is? And I would have some conversations with my friends and they'd be like, oh, Lisa, whatever. And I remember making a decision on a New Year's Eve in 2008, and I said, oh, I think I'm going to go to church this year. That's going to be my New Year's resolution. I was partying at the time, I was drunk at the time, but I was serious. And I said that because I thought that my kids needed God. I thought, you know what, I'm too far gone. I've made a mess of myself, but these girls of mine, they need Jesus. They need something firm to hold on to. I didn't have a background with God. I didn't have church growing up. The closest thing to church I had was being carted off in a bus to Bethel as a kid so that, our parents could sleep in on Sunday mornings. It was fun, but it didn't go deeper than the surface, or so I thought. So I ended up going to Living Hope, which is a church in Hamilton, and I went because my mother-in-law had invited me because somebody named Letitia from her work had invited her. I went into the church and I had a really emotional experience. I didn't know what was going on. I was in tears. I was like feeling strange, kind of warm and fuzzy, and it was definitely something that I was not used to. Chemicals don't make you feel warm and fuzzy all the time. So I remember leaving there and saying to Ray and saying to Corin, my mother-in-law, saying, like, I don't know what's going on in there, but something's happening. Like, it's weird, but I kind of like it. So we went back. I ended up getting connected into something called a C group, and that's just a group of women who study the Bible and share life with each other. So I got connected into that, and I was like a secret agent, guys. I was like, I'm going to figure out what's going on with these women, because there's no way that those smiles are real. There's no way that they really want good things for each other. My experience, and this isn't a judgment because I was the same way, was, you know, talking about people when they weren't in the room, lying. You know, we didn't really want somebody to do better than us. So I went to this group, and then I realized that they were like for real. Like they really were happy, and they really were, you know, not that they didn't have hard times, but they were getting things done in life. And so I would kind of like start praying, and praying to me was just like talking out loud in a room, which probably made me seem crazy at the time, but I didn't care. So I'd be like, you know, God, like if you're real, show me, and just prayers like that, simple things. And I felt like I would see signs all around about God. So like I would drop my kids off in the kids ministry, and I'd see like a picture of a hand, and it showed you how to pray. So like each finger represented something, like asking for forgiveness, thankfulness, praise, ask for what you'd like. So that's how I learned to pray, from that little sign. And I remember when I was going to this group, somebody was like making a joke about the Bible that they thought was really funny. And they were like, oh, everybody turn to Genesis. And then someone was like, oh yeah, like everybody knows where that book is. And I'm like sitting there, I'm like, I actually don't know where it is. It's the beginning of the Bible, for those of you if you don't know. But that's how fresh I was. That's how little I knew about the Lord. So I remember I was counting the cost to having a relationship with God. I was like, okay, so I feel like God's probably real by this point, because I'd gone to church, I'd experienced him, I heard things in the service that weren't your normal messages, but they related to real life. So even though the Bible was written 2,000 years ago, it'd be like, treat others well if you want to do well in life, and be generous with your time and your talents. And those were things that resonated in me, that I wanted to be as a member of society. So I was counting the cost, and drinking was something that the Lord put his hand on for me. And that doesn't mean that everybody has to not drink. I believe it's a personal conviction between you and the Lord, but for me, it was something that I used as a crutch. It was something that I was dependent on to function in life. And so the Lord told me that I would have to stop drinking. And I'm like, really, Jesus? Like, I'd read a little bit more of the Bible by now, and I'm like, you turned, you know, water into wine. How can you tell me not to drink? And all of this kind of thing. And I felt the Lord say to me, it allows the enemy to prey on you. And I'm like, okay. Well, think of my life, you know, I was definitely more agreeable when I was drinking. I was definitely more vulnerable when I was drinking. I was putting myself into situations that weren't safe. I was leaving my family and my boyfriend to go out to get attention from men that I didn't even know. And so, yeah, I think that was the truth. And so I decided, after a long night of drinking on a Saturday night, that on Sunday morning I would start a relationship with Jesus. I'm like, why not? You know, now is as good a time as any. So I put my hand up at the end of service, went up, said the prayer, and I really, really, guys, in my heart, I meant it. And so I started out, you know, stumbling and making mistakes along the way still, of course, but I started out my journey to know God more. And I learned that I was loved. I learned that I was accepted. I learned that there was a greater purpose to my life than just the Monday to Friday cycle. I learned that there are friendships that encourage and build you up. I learned that I was valuable and that my family could be closer than ever before. I learned that I was wrong in a lot of things, which to me was, you know, hard to swallow, but true. And I just felt like I was on the right path for the first time in my life. It's been about 10 years since I've been in a relationship with the Lord. Since then, I've got married to Ray. He stood by me through the whole thing. Like, honestly, guys, best guy ever. He's not going to church quite yet. He acknowledges the Lord, but he is not ready for the church thing yet. And my kids are amazing. They're doing well. They are confident young women in terms of my two girls, and I've got a son who loves the Lord, and he is a great cuddler. And you know, in terms of my house environment, I was very much wearing the pants of the relationship, and I learned how to honor Ray, my husband. I learned how to not verbalize every single opinion that I had, which, you know, I know women's rights is a thing, but ladies, there is freedom in not saying everything that you think. There is freedom in not having all the pressure to make the decisions for your own destiny. I love that I can speak to God as if I'm speaking to a friend. I get answers through the Bible and through just whisperings in my spirit. I feel like before I was kind of just, you know, making a decision here, making a decision here, making a decision here, and just waiting and seeing what would happen. Whereas now I feel like I'm more directive. I'm on a certain path. I know some long-term goals, which is never a thing for me, and short-term goals, and I'm seeing success in those. So it has brought traction to my life. It has brought an anchor to my life. You know, I know the church has bad rap sometimes, and we've done things to mess up sometimes, but ultimately I go to a great church, and they are filled with more people that I agree with than I don't, with similar principles that want to see something happen in other people's lives for the Lord. I'm so thankful that I found God. I'm so thankful that my life was changed. It was saved, really. Like, I don't know where I'd be right now, guys, if I stayed on that same path, but I'm sure it wouldn't be good. A scripture that I call my life scripture is in Philippians, and it's 4:8, and it says, whatever things are good, whatever things are noble, whatever things are of good rapport, focus then on these things. And if you know me at all, you know I'm an ultimate optimist, and I think that sums me up. I found that definition in the Word, and I hold tight to that even when things aren't going good. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it.